Welcome back to Settlement Nation podcast, your favorite trial lawyer podcast. Today, I have the superstars from the Los Angeles Valley, Adam Savin, Kim and Maureen Hennessey from Savin Bursk Law. These three lawyers make up the dynamic team from their marketing smarts to their results, with many settlements and verdicts on their score sheet, including a big $18.79 million verdict that they just had recently, which we're going to chat about today. I love seeing fierce young attorneys taking on the big boys in the courtroom and out. So it's a pleasure to have you all. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.
I am so excited. Now, I'm starting off the episode today with something a little bit different. This is just to get us in the mood. What Game of Thrones character do you resonate with the most and why? And Brian, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, I always have to start first. What Game of Thrones character?
You have 3 seconds. 3, 2.
What do you think about that? I would have to say, what is that dude who is with Daenerys early on? That just the wild man.
Oh, Drogo?
Yes, him.
Love him.
I'd say I'm like him just because I'm just a wild man.
I love that. All right, Maureen, what about you?
Oh gosh, I don't even know their names. I'll go with the chick that rides around on the dragon.
Yes.
She's pretty cool. I don't know that I identify with her, but I mean, that's a good answer. Right?
I like that one. Adam, I know you have a good answer for this.
You know, I like the newest episode, so I like Daemon Targaryen.
Okay, why?
You know, he's just such a badass. He just kind of doesn't really care about, being king, and he just rides the dragon and just kind of does what he wants. And just,
that's kind of you.
Yeah, there's just that one scene where he had to take down like the Crab King or whatever it was on that island, and he just didn't care. And he just went all in just on his own and just pretty much massacred all of them and won that battle.
That.
So it's just pretty awesome.
I see you as that. And I would say mine is the guy, his name's Beric Dondarrion, and he is one of the Lord of Light warriors that wears the eye patch. And he's the one that lights his sword just from his hand and has died 6 times. I like him because he's kind of on the side, but then you look over and you're like, oh shit, this guy's getting wild over here. You don't even really notice him, but he's doing some crazy stuff. All right, good. So we've started off. I had to get that out of the way. It's a very important question. Now for actual law stuff. So Adam, I'm going to start with you. How did you get started and what was your catalyst to becoming a trial lawyer?
I was on a path to become a lawyer from a little kid with both my parents being attorneys. It just kind of seemed like a good, easy fit. And I originally started off doing workers' comp, didn't really like the trial aspect of workers' comp because it's just bench trials. And I just kind of started phasing into personal injury and slowly getting into trials. And the truth about trials is the more you do and the better you get and the better results you get, the more you want to do it. It's kind of like an addictive nature. And, I think the three of us are already we can't wait to start the next trial and just see what happens next.
I love that. Maureen, what about you?
Oh, not as direct of a path. I was sort of wandering aimlessly through life, went to law school without a plan. I was like, I can write. Is lawyering good for people who write well? So I really didn't have a plan, and I really did experiment. I worked on the defense side for years. I went in-house for a large medical institution, and then eventually found my way really to Brian. And he encouraged me to get back into litigation on the plaintiff side, which was new to me. And so I really just sort of took a leap and took a chance, and I fell in love with the work, which I cannot say about the work I was doing previously. And then Brian really, he maybe saw something I didn't see, but he said, "You're going to love trial." And I said, "Absolutely not. I will be behind the scenes. I will support you. I don't want to be seen in trial." But anyway, I jumped into trial. He kind of pushed me in, and I caught the bug. I love it. And that's sort of the short version of my journey.
I like it.
Yeah, right. I'm the one who found her, for the record.
Sorry, I was going to say one of the conditions she had when we hired her was, I'm not doing any trials. and that was her condition. And we've kind of changed that in her. So,
well, no, it wasn't a condition, but yeah.
Brian, what about you? You pulled Maureen in from, the other side. How did you get started?
Well, I come from a family of lawyers and judges, and I really didn't want to do this. I had seen the level of sacrifice and the level of dedication and hard work that went into lawyering. And when I mean that, I mean lawyering and doing it the right way. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And, sometimes when you have just a kind of a purpose in life, it kind of finds you. And so this path kind of just found me, particularly when my father got sick and died of cancer unexpectedly. And sometimes when your life gets flipped upside down and you have, wounds, you look for a sense of purpose. And so what it did for me is it required me to go back to my roots. And my roots were, going back and helping the little guy, which is something that my family has always done through the legal system. And so I found that I had a passion to be the voice for people who didn't have one and needed somebody to stick up for them against all odds. And so I fell in love with this and I've never looked back. And that's how I fell into it.
Love it. Now, kind of on the same vein, Adam, I'll start with you again. What were the things that you're thinking of when you kind of put the team together, or when you all came together and started working together? How did you see the pieces fitting together of the strengths of each person?
It's kind of an interesting thing. I looked around at a lot of really great trial attorneys, and one commonality a lot of those firms had was there's one good trial attorney, and then everybody else kind of supports them. And the one guy I saw doing it differently at the time that was kind of like a mentor of mine, or at least I looked up to him, was actually Bob Simon. And he was building out, he had like Tom Fair and Sevy Fisher and Grayson Goody. And he just kind of started putting together this team of really good, talented guys. And it got to a point where it didn't matter who was going into trial. Any one of those guys could swing for the fence, and any one of those guys can hit a big verdict. And I thought that was a very scary thing to have for as a trial firm. So, I got Brian originally because of, Ed Morgan said, this guy's worked at CZR. He's kind of been in the shadows of John Carpenter. He's really good. I think he's going to be an amazing trial attorney. And I agree. I think he has like that special spark about him. And I brought him on for the purpose of basically being a big hitter trial attorney one day, which he's obviously proven that he can do it. And then we brought on Maureen, and we knew she was going to be kind of like the wizard. And originally we brought her on to be kind of like the wizard behind the mysteries of trial, the person who just kind of helps us create the right path to victory. And now she has kind of taken that and stepped into the shoes that she's, fulfilling her own destiny and proven just back-to-back amazing results, amazing outlier verdicts. So we look at the three of us right now as, a really good dynamic, a really good kind of trio team to tackle these cases.
And if Maureen is the wizard, who is Dorothy and who is Toto?
I don't know how to answer that question.
It's a trick question. Brian, we will get into this more when we talk about the case you had with Maureen, but when you sort of think about maybe the strengths that you have and how they complement what other people have, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, everyone has their strengths and their things that they can work on. Being a trial lawyer, I think, is the more I'm in a courtroom, the more I realize that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't think a lot of people know what they're doing. Really simplifying what happens in a courtroom is it's a battle of truth. And so you have to basically bring your A game when it comes to who you are and the truth that you're trying to present. I think one of the strengths that I have is I wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm not afraid to show it. And I think that juries can sense that I mean what I say and I say what I mean. And I also think I have this ability to connect with people and really to draw out what their human experience is. And I think some of that is intuition. But I think another big part of that is because I wear my heart on my sleeve, I'm not afraid to share kind of who I am and how I feel and things that I've been through. So I think those are the two things that have kind of allowed me to progress as a trial lawyer.
I love that. Now, Maureen, a different question for you, considering you didn't want to go to trial. What was your first day like stepping into a courtroom when you're coerced to do this scary thing called be a trial lawyer?
You got to tell them about the Bachi Galubo story. It's the best story ever.
Don't worry. I can see Brian laughing. He thinks this is a great question. Oh, my first day. Well, it started with motions in limine. We were in Van Nuys before Judge Bachi Galubo, who's a great judge. And, there's no jury there. Nobody's there. It was just me, Brian, Ed Morgan, the judge, and opposing counsel. And I don't know. I was so nervous to be there. I've been in court before many, many times, but we were stepping in for a different purpose. We were there for trial. And I felt so out of place and uncertain. And I argued at an MIL, and I got like, God, I can still feel myself sitting there in this moment. I got like 5 seconds into arguing, and like I described it to Brian as I stroked out. Like basically, I had some kind of, I don't even know if it was a panic attack or what, but I like lost my voice. Like I got tunnel vision. I think I'm describing a panic attack. Yeah. And I remember, I realized in the moment, like I lost track of what I was saying. And I was like, I don't know if anyone can hear me. And I just remember looking directly at the judge, and he was looking back at me like with sympathy. And I was like, oh no. Everyone can, this is not going well if he's looking at me this way. He knows. So I don't really know how that ended. I think he kind of just stepped in and probably denied our motion, and we moved on. And then, we took a break, and I walked out into the hallway, and I apologized. I was almost in tears. I apologized to Brian. I was mortified. And I was like, it's okay. Kick me out. You can fire me. That's it. You can totally fire me if I have a meltdown during MILs. I'm not meant to be here. But he said, just like, get on with your day. You have a lot of work to do ahead of you. You got to prepare for the witness I'm giving you in this trial. And I had a really small role in this trial. I took like a couple witnesses, but he said, you have things to prepare for. So, we just jumped back in, and I did fine, when trial actually got started.
I love that sort of trial by fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I told her it wasn't that bad of a stroked out. I told her it was like a second or two. It was like 10 seconds that she stroked out.
It was terrible. It was so terrible.
The thing about it is Maureen, she really cares, and that's kind of why I brought her on. Is her heart is in the right place, and once her heart is in the right place and it's there, she is a formidable opponent. I mean, she's the kind of person who will stay up all night and just wreck herself just to crush somebody on the other side. So that you can just smell it on her. I knew she'd be good in the courtroom.
I love that. And for both of you, quickly. Similar story, different story. Adam, I'll start with you. Was it great? Was it a train wreck? What happened?
My first trial?
Yes.
It was a complete train wreck. I actually walked into my very first trial by myself, and I had never seen a trial in my entire life. I never watched one. I had never gone to a trial seminar or a course. I wasn't involved in like CALA or anything. And it was just a very small $15,000, probably max value slip and fall case, San Bernardino. And my dad just said, well, can't get better experience than actually doing a trial. So, I got stopped real quickly in jury selection when I started calling jurors by their first name, because I knew I wanted to try to connect with them. And the judge yelled at me and said, you can't call them by their first name, and then we got to openings, and I started just arguing the hell out of the case. And I kept getting objections, argument. And finally, and they kept being sustained. And finally, I just looked at the judge and said, Your Honor, this is opening argument. And the judge goes, "This is opening statement, counsel. Arguments at the end." And at that moment, I knew I was in trouble. It was just downhill from there. So.
Oh my gosh, Brian, similar or different for you?
Well, we're talking about the first trial. I think the first trial was a trial I did with John Carpenter, and it ended up being a really big result. I think it was like a $10 million verdict that we got. But I will say the courtroom felt so foreign and stiff to me. And I saw, these jurors that walked in with their glaring eyes, watching every single movement, and it scared the shit out of me. It honestly did. But once John Carpenter, this is back when CZ&R was a thing. Now it's CZ. They really took the time to teach lawyers there how to simplify what goes on in a trial and to make it more about the human story, not lawyer tricks and accident reconstruction experts and biomechanical experts and all these medical experts with their fancy medical degrees. I mean, I'll be honest, when I heard all the experts that were going to be called at trial and we're going through all their testimony, and it scared the hell out of me because I'm like, I don't even know what they're saying right now. Like, I'm a baby lawyer. What are they saying? I don't understand any of this. What's a delta V? What does that even mean? Right? But when I saw how simple the case came down to, which was with the human story and kind of what happened, what this person had been through, and what this person's injury was going to look like for the rest of his life. And the sad part is it was a brain injury case. I mean, this guy had no idea how bad his injury was. They asked him to spell his name on the stand, and he couldn't spell his name. His name was Antonio. He could not spell his name. And it was one of these moments where it was not a scripted moment. And right there, starting off, the jury knew something was really wrong. And then the way the testimony shook out was, here's this guy who has made a makeshift weight. What he did is he duct taped a bunch of heavy objects together onto a handle and was working out every single day because in his mind, he believed that the harder he worked out, the better he'd get, and he would eventually get his life back. And it was the saddest thing. And that was the story we told. And it was not about all this complex medical stuff. Yeah, that stuff came into play to kind of show, that there was medical pieces that matched up. But really, it was seeing how simple the human story and the strength of that and the strength of the human spirit. And the jury got behind that guy. And so that was my first trial. There were many other poor trials after that, but that was my first trial experience. It was eye-opening.
And on that, let's transition into your recent case, because I'm a big believer in the human story. Now, to give the listeners some background, Brian and Maureen recently got a $18.79 million jury verdict on a slip and fall in Santa Monica. This was a couple weeks ago. So starting off, Maureen, I'll start off with you. Do you want to give us a little bit more background on this case? And Brian, feel free to jump in whenever you need to.
Yeah, sure. Brian will help me out. I mean, this is just a basic classic slip and fall case. Our client went into a McDonald's restaurant in Lomita, California to buy some orange juice early in the morning. The store had just opened, and he bought an orange juice, and on his way out of the store, he slipped and fell on garbage juice, basically liquid that had been leaked from a garbage bag that was taken out on the floor. And it was a really nasty fall. And, for anyone else, a nasty fall still wouldn't have really had any consequence probably. But our client, he had 2 prior back surgeries, 2 lumbar surgeries. And so he had serious injuries when he fell directly on his low back. He ended up requiring first a microdecompression. It was a revision microdecompression because he had 2 prior at the same level. And when that was not entirely successful, he went on to require a spinal cord stimulator. And so those are the injuries in a nutshell. But the liability workup on the case was extremely difficult. We were told at the outset, there's no video footage. We turned cameras off 2 days prior, supposedly for construction coming up. There was no construction going on at the time of the incident. But in any event, we had no footage. And we were told the maintenance worker that did witness this incident is no longer working at this McDonald's location. We don't have an address for her. So there's no witness to the incident. There's no video footage. And then they went on to very quickly from the outset blame our client. They said oddly that he purchased 2 orange juices and suggested he spilled one of them. We knew that wasn't true, actually. But from the outset, they did the thing that McDonald's has done in the past, and they blamed our client. And so it took us 2 years to eventually get them to admit liability. We did that before trial. And so this was a very, very tough fight. For 2 years, Brian and I fought very hard to try to locate that witness to the fall. We took a lot of PMK depositions and kind of hammered them. Their PMKs did a terrible job in deposition. So we just kind of pushed forward despite really being the underdog in the fight the whole time. We just pushed forward because we believed in our client. He was very seriously injured, and we knew he was telling the truth.
Yeah, Brian, add to this. You had told me previously when we spoke about this case that there was a bunch of weird stuff that happened, like, let's get the juice. Not, it is about juice, garbage juice and orange juice.
When I look back on the case, it's one of those situations where it almost kind of feels like it was just meant to be. And what I mean by that is when I first met Jonathan, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his story. It wasn't even my case. And so I walk into another lawyer's office and I introduce myself and I say, hey, well, what's your story? And we kind of just start talking. And, this is before a lawsuit is filed. I don't know anything about his case. I just know it's a slip and fall. I don't know how bad he's hurt, but we kind of just hit it off and connected. And I just told him, I hadn't done this before, by the way. I just told him, you know what? I think I'm going to take your case. And I think, I don't know anything about your case. It sounds like a hard case. Slip and fall cases are, notorious for being difficult cases, but I something in his eyes just told me, he needed some help. And so that's how we kind of hit it off. And then, I got to learn him more and more. And we're talking about a guy where Maureen and I spent, Adam was there too. All 3 of us spent years just spending time with him and learning kind of what he had gone through. And we were there, during the time period where he was living out of his car and had lost his job. He was evicted. His dogs got taken away from him that were his little puppies. They ended up getting put down. He had enough money kind of scrapped together, enough to pay for a gym membership. And that's where he would shower every day. He would go to the gym and he would shower and he'd go back to his car and try to find, work that he could, pay some bills with. But it was, everything changed after the fall. And so here we are going up against a corporation. It's kind of like this classic David and Goliath story. It's an American story about him going up against this massive corporation. And after years of, covering up what actually happened, we got to the truth and we discovered what this company had actually done to cover up the incident and they knew he was hurt. They knew it, but they downplayed everything. So there we are on the eve of trial. And Maureen and I get a phone call from some gentleman in Atlanta, Georgia on behalf of McDonald's. And he tells us, you ain't ever going to see $1 over $5 million. And he laughed in our face and he scoffed and he said, McDonald's never lose slip and fall cases. We never lose them. And so he said, and one thing you don't tell me, I think it's a Korean thing, but it's also a personal thing. You don't tell me I can't do something. And so we accepted that challenge. And eventually there was a point where after closing argument, it's funny. It's a funny story. Actually, during closing argument, Maureen remembers this. My phone is ringing back to back to back. It's like 10 times in a row. My phone is just ringing, but I'm doing closing, and we're told that, they want to offer $4 million. And so we finish closing, and we sit our client Jonathan down, and we tell him, hey, that's good money. I can't promise you we're going to get that in Santa Monica. This is a slip and fall case. You see how these people think about slip and fall cases. They think that they're notorious for abuse, and $4 million is good money. I don't think it's fair value of what happened to you and what's been taken away, in the way of health, but it's good money. And then he shows me this TikTok video he's got on his phone, and and he's telling me, you know what, Brian, I believe in us. He's like, and he says, I don't have anything. Well, let's just go all the way. And he shows me this TikTok video, and it's like this voodoo man that Jonathan had paid $10 for, that's flipping over like bones and cards. And it was like the most bizarre thing. But he says, I have a sign. And so we're going through the TikTok video, and this guy is saying, okay, just give me your name, your age, and your city. And so Jonathan tells him, my name's Jonathan. I'm 31, turning 32 years old, and I live in Los Angeles. And this guy starts flipping over the cards. And the first card, he's like, oh my God, he's like, abundance of wealth. This is a very rare card. And we're not just talking about little money. He said, this is an insane amount of money. I haven't seen this card before. The man throws some bones, and he flips over the second card. And the second card is something with skulls or something like that. And he's like, something very bad happened to you. This is not, you've paid the sacrifice. You've paid the price for this. Something very bad has happened to you. And then he flips over the third card. And the third card, the voodoo man says to Jonathan, you're going to have to make a very difficult decision. He's like, and you're going to be putting everything on the line. And so Jonathan took that TikTok video of the voodoo man as a sign that we were supposed to go all the way. And so, look, I don't know, both my grandfathers are preachers. They'd probably be rolling over in their graves if they found out that we based a decision off voodoo cards or whatever the hell Jonathan was looking at. But, like I said, going back, it's almost like everything just kind of matched up and was supposed to happen this way. So long way of answering your question.
It's what we want. We need all the details. Now, when it came down to calculating, and the damages and working out that framework, I remember Maureen and Brian, you both said that Maureen, you came up with a very interesting way of putting this all together. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Before Maureen does it, I think I need to just preface something, because I need to take responsibility for something. Maureen and Adam actually sat me down, and I got reprimanded for the number I was going to ask. I was going to ask for something between $7 and $12 million for Jonathan's lifelong forever injury. And Adam and Maureen was very upset. And so I got a talking to, and, both of them know I can't go into a courtroom and tell a jury something if I don't truly believe it in my heart. And so they were able to, convince me that I was looking at the case and the value of the case the wrong way. But speaking of, I'll let Maureen kind of talk about it, because what happened is we figured out our damage analysis 45 minutes before trial. I mean, it was 8:15 in the morning, and 9 a.m. is when I'm doing closing. And that's, I'll let Maureen talk about how we came up with this damage calculation.
Yeah, Brian and I were up all night the night before closing. And one of the big, the ongoing discussion that night was, what do we ask for and how do we get there? And how does it make sense? How do we explain it? And we had crunched numbers and tried different things all night, and it just wasn't working. I think at one point our ask worked out to about $15 million all in, and Brian was comfortable with that. And I just said, sorry, that's just not high enough. It has to start with the 2, Brian. I'm not endorsing this. So find a new equation, find a new formula, because this does not get us to where we need to be. And he said, you're nuts. And I said, please, it has to have a 2, and I just don't devalue this case. So we were up all night thinking about this and talking it through. We were like delirious by the early morning, but we eventually came to realize that it would be best to tie the analysis and tailor it to our client, not to sort of something cutesy, like, what do the experts make per hour or something like that, or what is minimum wage. We really wanted to tailor it to Jonathan. And the testimony in the case, the evidence that came out was that Jonathan, prior to the incident, he was a camera operator on sets, and that was his passion in life. He went to school for it, and he couldn't do it anymore. He was still working, but he certainly couldn't lift heavy cameras and operate cameras. And so we tied it to that. Jonathan was making $45 an hour as a camera operator before our incident, and that was doing something he loved. That was his passion in life. And so we said, give him $45 an hour for this new job that he can't quit. He can't take a day off from this job. There's no vacation time. And this is doing something terrible. And he's stuck with this new job for the rest of his life. So that's how we tied it to Jonathan that way. And it got us, we did the math, and that's what got us all in. We asked for 21 million and some change. And so I was satisfied with that. And that's what we did.
I love that. And I like
I'll
the breakdown.
I think Maureen hit it on the head. Really, it came down to giving the jury a measuring stick, because, in jury selection, Maureen did jury selection. A lot of these folks, they were good folks, wanted to try to do the right thing. And you could sense that they were earnest people that wanted to try to do the right thing, whether that was finding for us or not. But one of the things that they struggled with was, well, how in the world do you quantify pain and suffering damages? They say medical bills and lost earnings. Like, I can put a number on that. You just tally it up, do some multiplication with that. But with pain and suffering damages, I don't know how to quantify that. And so really what we struggled with was giving them a measuring stick that they could use. Did they have to use it? No, but it was showing them that there was a way that you could do it. And so what was fair to Jonathan, right, was $45 an hour for something he chose to do. And this injury, he had a spinal cord stimulator. And the evidence was that, he woke up, and starting from the moment he opened his eyes, he was playing around with a remote. And, human bodies are not meant to come with remotes. And so this guy was, using a remote to, and the dial to turn the pain up or down, which is that's not normal. Every time he sat down, the testimony was he could feel that foreign, unnatural device in his butt, in his rear. And that even at night, he would have to have that device on at a very low idle setting just so he could stay asleep. Otherwise, what he described as the thunderbolts going through his body would just keep him up all night. So we said, this is a 24/7 job. I mean, the guy can't even sleep through the night without having to have this machine run its course and keep the pain at a manageable level. So we said $45 was something he was willing to accept for something he loved, and he chose. This nightmare, he didn't choose to do it. $45, that's what's fair in this case as well. And I think the jury got on board with that.
I think so. Well, obviously they did. Adam, this question's for you on the same topic. The jury's out deliberating. What are you thinking this time? Are you like, these guys did a great job? What the hell? I hope it works out. What are we going to do after this?
I had actually a pretty amazing experience during this trial, because it was a very small, intimate courtroom. Like it's not one of those big downtown courtrooms. I'm sitting in the back. And one of the things when you're in there doing the trial, you're really focused on the witnesses and your client and the judge, and you're not really making a whole lot of eye contact with the jury. You kind of look at them, but you're not really looking at them. And the way the jury was spread out in this courtroom, about half the jury was behind Brian and Maureen the whole time, but I was behind everybody. And I just kind of immersed myself in the back of the courtroom. I was there the entire trial as basically another juror. I was kind of like, I infiltrated the jury and I put myself in their shoes, kind of watching this case unfold. And I remember telling Brian at the very end too, because I do think he's the most conservative between me and Maureen. And me and Maureen were having these side conversations at night. And I was just like, Maureen, you got to tell Brian, he needs to ask for a lot more. And the day before, I was telling them, like, the jury, you guys have it. You guys have it. I watched the evidence come out. I watched the defendant. I'm watching the reactions of the jury. They're with you guys. You got it. Just go for it. You have to ask for $20+ million. And I remember, I think it was like 2 a.m. or something. Maureen text messaged me like, you're going to be really happy. We're asking for 21. And I don't remember exactly what time, but I remember going, okay, thank God. Because I think even before we started trial, Brian was even closer to like a 5 to 8 number. He thought we were crazy even getting to 10. And then finally, I think we convinced him to get somewhere between 10 and 15. And then Maureen kind of pushed at the very end. But it was actually, a really cool experience to kind of sit back and just kind of be like the man in the seat, kind of watching it unfold and having a different perspective. And they were the masterminds in the trial. I tried to just tell them what I saw, each day and debrief them and help where I could. But this was really their master plan. So
that's awesome. And last question on this topic, Maureen, when you heard the result, how did you feel?
I was extremely relieved because I felt responsible, for Jonathan's future, and I was tremendously worried, honestly, about him and how he was going to support himself, get all of the medical care he needs for the next 47 years of his life. It's really serious. So I was first and foremost extremely relieved, and then just overwhelmed with gratitude for the jury. It's just a really humbling experience. I'm new to this. And so getting these verdicts, to me, it's so humbling. And it's just this amazing feeling. When you've lived a case for several years, you adore your client, they're telling the truth, they're hurt. And then you come in, you present your case over just, for us, it was 3 days to present our case. And you just hope to God that these people see what you see in just, a few days. And you don't know. And so to get the verdict back and to see that, okay, they see what we see and they're with us. They support our client. It's an amazing feeling. So I was very, very grateful to the jury and extremely relieved.
Brian, what about you? How did you feel?
I was sitting next to Jonathan on, so Maureen was on his right side. I take that back. Maureen was on my right side. Jonathan was on the far right. So if you can imagine, it's me on the left, Maureen in the middle, Jonathan on the right. And I could see that Maureen was clutching kind of onto Jonathan's side as we were waiting for the jury to as the verdict's going to be read. And I'll be honest with you, every single time I have a verdict that's about to be read, I am from head to toe. I could just feel so much fear. I know I'm not supposed to say that as a lawyer, but I'm afraid. And this was particularly, I felt a little bit more, it was almost crippling in a sense, just because, we just got done watching that stupid TikTok video. And I'm like, are we idiots for not taking the money? And that would still be life-changing money for him. But the second that I could slowly hear the numbers being read, it started off with the medical expenses, and he had over $1 million in medical expenses. And so I could just slowly, line by line, as I feel the fear kind of just lift off of me. And then the next was the past non-economic damages for pain and suffering. And that was, $1.7 million. And then the last was kind of just, it was just this huge dramatic silence for the future non-economic damages. And when the clerk had read $16 million, I couldn't believe it. My mind was blown. And I was just so overwhelmed with joy and with, like Maureen said, gratitude, just because we had been heard. The jury had heard us and they understood. And it just, I don't know. I'm still in disbelief over it.
No, it's such an amazing result, and well-deserved, I think, for your client as well. I'm sure he could not have imagined that something like this would have happened. But as you said, it is deserved because of what he has to go through every day. Sort of on this topic, Adam, I do have a question for you. You guys are younger lawyers, and sometimes you're going up against very, seasoned defense lawyers. What strategies and mindset do you take into the courtroom, knowing that, maybe there is some bias when they're looking at you, thinking, what do these little young pups know? Is there anything that goes through your mind or any specific strategies that you use?
I think that 10 years ago, I would have had a different answer to that question. I think now, at the age we're at, all kind of hovering a little bit around the 40 range. Maureen's a little younger. I think that we're at the age now where we look mature enough, where we kind of do relate with a lot of the jurors. We've had enough life experience. And I used to just be really intimidated by the older defense attorneys, thinking they've been around the block and back. They've done 100 trials. And the one thing I've learned is they're not that scary. Most of them, there's a couple of really good guys, but most of them are they're just regular defense attorneys. And I've seen guys who are, in their 70s who have 100 trials under their belt fumble the whole trial. And I've seen guys who are, in their late 20s, early 30s as defense attorneys do an amazing job. So age is just a number like anything else. So it doesn't really play a factor for me.
I love that. And Maureen, on that note, for young lawyers listening, what advice would you have for them? There's a lot of people that are probably even younger than you three that are going into this maybe for the first time. They don't want to stroke out. So what advice do you have for them when they're facing these people?
Oh gosh. For me, it's just, you got to expect to have some mishaps, I guess. I don't know how you could prevent a stroke out. If I knew, I would have prevented it myself. The best thing you can do is just to dust yourself off and keep going, really, and just to get back in there. That's what I try to do, and just push through the uncomfortable moments. I think that when you push yourself into the danger zone where you're truly uncomfortable and you perhaps feel it's too soon, too early, that's where the best growth happens. I keep experiencing that over and over again with even just through litigation. There's different experiences that come up that are new for me and uncomfortable. And but certainly in trial, it's all new for me. It's all uncomfortable. And, the gains that are had, when you're in an uncomfortable space, they're huge. So I would just encourage people to just throw themselves into uncomfortable situations.
Great answer. Brian, other than magic chicken bones, what advice do you have for younger lawyers in the same situation?
Well, I tend to agree with Maureen. There's a saying that I have told her before. I learned it over at this college with all the Spence folks. And I remember seeing it written down on a wall somewhere. And the saying was, the place that seems most dangerous is exactly where safety lies. I take that to heart. I think that Maureen has really gone to the belly of fear and danger and has really come out a different lawyer. So I just wanted to add that. But my advice, would be, I guess it would be, go back to your roots and find your voice again. And what I mean by that is law school has a way of making young to-be lawyers lose their humanity in a sense. You become a clog in a wheel and you forget who you are. You start talking different. You start using fancy words. You start, parading around your fancy degree. And a lot of lawyers are not, I mean, let's be honest, there's a reason why lawyers are not really liked as a profession and are viewed with distrust. It's because a lot of lawyers change after law school. And I think that when you're if trial work is what you want to do, integrity and authenticity, that's key. How can you get up in front of a jury if you're not authentic and if the jury sees that you're credible and that you have integrity? So what I would encourage people to do is find a way to strip yourself of all that clunky, heavy armor that law school puts on you and ditch it. And there are guys like Brian Ward and Henry Pecor, these young lawyers who tried cases literally back when I was at CZR. I used to talk to these guys, and they tried cases literally right out of law school, and they ended up doing a lot better, in my opinion, than guys who have done the gig, learning how to try a case with all that clunky armor. I don't think it works in a courtroom.
Yeah, no, great advice. And kind of on that note too, this is a different topic, but something, Adam, I think you're very good at. Marketing. A lot of lawyers, I think, they do it wrong. They love the many leather-bound book, old school sort of persona or situation, but you've taken a different approach to marketing yourselves and your firm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And it kind of ties in a little bit with the last question that you asked Brian and Maureen. And a lot of it is just about trying to be genuine and be yourself and breaking the molds and the stereotypes of what lawyers before us have done. And, I think what we try to do is just be ourselves, show who we really are, not be afraid to do silly things or be embarrassed. And I think you kind of feel that right when you walk into our office. It's not a bunch of lawyers in suits and secretaries and, dresses or whatever. We kind of take the vibe down. We're regular people. We try to connect with regular people. That's how we do our cases. That's how we do the trials. And, if you look at even the way lawyers were trained to do trials, which is one of the reasons I think Maureen right out the gate is doing so well, because I don't think she saw this or had this training. And just so you know, this was her second trial within 30 days with an incredible result. So me and Maureen did a trial 30 days, before this, and had another incredible result where she got to pick her first jury and do her first opening statement. And, we're taught as lawyers to look at what other lawyers in the past have done before us. And it's very lawyerly. I don't know how else to say it other than call it very lawyerly, with like books, in your office, and have a certain type of suit and a certain type of tie and certain type of shoes. And, Marie didn't really get the experience to kind of see that and learn from that. And so she just right out the gate was herself. And I think that resonated with the jury, none of these lawyer tricks. And I think when you take that type of personality and you put it into the marketing and just show that we're just regular people, that we make mistakes, that we can be funny, that we can be silly, and that we don't have to be stuffy, that we're not above everybody else, that we're not a profession that's above, the common folks. We're just working people doing our job to help our clients and to help the people. And I think when you put that into your marketing strategy, that's just kind of what we're trying to do. Just look at what other firms are doing and say, whatever they're doing, we don't want to do. Let's do something different. Let's be ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And second part to the question, same for you, Adam. You do have a lot of big verdicts and settlements, in your results, and you've got a lot of justice for your clients. Do you think there is a secret to your success other than what you just spoke about?
I think what's an important takeaway, and I think this applies to a lot of people, there's a lot of losses that come before all the wins. And it takes a lot of trying, a lot of practice, and the results just kind of keep getting bigger and bigger. I still remember the first time I got $100,000 on a case. I thought it was like insane. I remember the first time I got $1 million on a case. I thought that was insane. And you just kind of keep getting better and better. And I think that the biggest factor that a lot of young attorneys need to learn is you have to be willing to take the risk. You have to be, if you want to get the big results, you have to be willing to walk away from big offers and trust in yourself and trust in the process. In a lot of our cases, whether it's trial or settlement, we walk out of mediation with multi-million dollars on the table. Sometimes a lot more money than our clients want. And we have to convince our clients, which is a very scary thing, by the way, when you're convincing your clients to walk away from millions of dollars and you're saying, I'm pretty sure I can get you more. You just got to trust in us, but there's no guarantee. And to be able to do that effectively, you have to really build a really good relationship with your clients where they truly trust you, not as a lawyer, but as a person. And that's something that in our office, we really do try. All of our clients have our cell phone numbers. We go to dinners and lunches with them. One of our recent settlements, our client's inviting Brian, Maureen, and me to her wedding in a few months. And that's a case where we convinced her not to settle and we pushed it. So being able to take the risk, if they can't afford the risk, they need to find somebody that can help them with that risk. Because without the risk, there's no greater reward. And if you can't afford to take the risk, you're doing injustice to your clients because you're settling too cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we only have a couple of questions left. I can't believe we're getting to the end. Brian, this one, first of all, is for you. Obviously having mentors, you did mention some lawyers before that are really great, big fans of ours here on Settlement Nation, but how important are mentors and other educational things, whether it's like CLEs, webinars, podcasts, books? How do you kind of upskill yourself as a younger lawyer sort of turning into now?
I think mentors are critical for any young lawyer's success. I don't know how I'd be in the situation I am right now without not one mentor. I have several mentors because every experienced lawyer who's been in a courtroom has a different pair of eyes. They see differently. And like, for example, I just was talking to Haitham Faraj just recently. He had stepped into a part of the direct examination of Jonathan. And he had to bail after the examination, but he had just kind of just given me his insight of what he saw, things that he thought had gone right, things that had gone wrong. And so I think mentors are people who can help you see differently, and I think that's the key to success is always evolving and seeing differently and bouncing ideas off of mentors and having a strong enough chin to take criticism when it's deserved, so that you can continue to evolve. The second that you think you got it all nailed and you're where you're supposed to be at, I think that's when it's time for you to hang up your hat. I think they call it the practice of law for a reason. You got to just put in reps over and over and over again.
Yes. Maureen, what about you? Do you have any go-to mentors or, educational things that you do to keep yourself sharp?
Yeah, my mentors are Brian and Adam, and they really, truly though. So those two guys are my mentors, and pretty much all of my professional development is thanks to them. They spend so much time working with me, giving me feedback in real time, so that I can get better. And I think my growth has been pretty decent since I started. I've been with these guys. I'm coming up on the 3-year mark in March. And I can feel a change. Hopefully they can see a change. But it's the changes that have happened are really thanks to them. They spend a tremendous amount of time, and they've invested so much time in me and helping me get better. So that's it. Of course, I read books, I listen to podcasts, but the real growth has happened from me being given up, first of all, an opportunity by both of these guys to get in and do the real work, and then receiving good feedback and criticism and encouragement along the way.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer. And I love that your mentors you get to sit next to all the time and hang out. One of our last questions, Adam, this one is to start off with you. Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? Everything panning out the way you want it. What does that look like?
I think that my dream ultimately is to have a smaller caseload for the office, but much larger cases. I think one of the unique things, and something that when I was a younger lawyer, I'd look at guys like Arash or Dordick or, Alder, and I would think, how are these guys getting such big verdicts? And look, they are phenomenal trial attorneys without a doubt, but they've built such a reputation that now they get the pick of the litter, right? They get to cherry pick their cases, just like Nick Raleigh. They get the best of the cases brought to them, and then they make them even better. And we're not yet at that level. So we're taking cases that normally would be settling for, under $1 million and turning those into $2 or $3 million cases. And we're taking $2 or $3 million cases and trying to turn those into $7 or $8 million cases and so forth. So I think ultimately I would love for us to get to a point where we get a couple more big verdicts. We have stuff lined up next year already that we're kind of planning, teeing up, basically getting ready. And I would love for us to have less cases, more referrals, and just kind of starting to get, some of that, pick of the litter type cases so we can really show what we can do.
Brian, what about you? In the next couple of years, where do you hope to see your career go?
I think I see myself still in a courtroom, and maybe we'll have some younger lawyers that we can kind of bring on board to give them a shot and help them grow as trial lawyers and as people. I think that part of the success in my mind is not just keeping it all to yourself, but sharing it and helping other people grow. And I don't know. I don't see us stopping. I don't want to stop. I want to just keep going.
Perfect. Maureen, what about you?
Yeah, it's really similar. I expect to see myself in trial with both Adam and Brian, and I hope that I'm better than I am now. If I'm not, there's something wrong. So personally, I hope I just continue to grow and be more effective in the courtroom and trying cases with these guys.
I love that. Now to end, each of you gets one sentence word of wisdom or sentence of wisdom for our listeners. Maureen, I will start back with you. If you could just impart something that people should either incorporate into their trial workup. Maybe it's a strategy, maybe it's a belief, maybe it's, I don't know. You tell the world.
Embrace the truth, the whole truth, and tell it. We did that in Jonathan's case. There were some bad facts, good facts, all of it. We got ahead of all of it, and we just told the truth. And I think that the jury appreciated that. And part of telling the truth is also just being yourself, letting your client really be themselves, and as lawyers, really being authentic.
Brian?
It's funny when you're asking that. I don't even have a sentence. I'm just kind of hearing something that my dad used to tell me when I was a kid. He said, to become the best, it's all about what people don't see. And it's about the reps and all the things that go on behind the scenes. It's not when the coach is watching. It's not when people are watching. It's when nobody's watching. And so my advice would be, don't do it for the glory and I guess the praise that you're seeking from other people. It's all about what other people don't see, and just to hone your craft on your own when nobody's watching.
Mm-hmm. Very powerful. Lucky last, Adam.
I'm kind of going to go with a quote that kind of I've always liked, and it basically says that success is rented. It's not owned. And that rent is due every single day. And it basically, to me, means, the verdicts we got, those are now in the past. You can't live off of those glory days going forward. We got to just keep pushing forward, grinding and hustling the same way we've been, working hard until we get the next verdict. And then the next verdict, that becomes the past, and we just keep marching forward to the next one. So you don't take a rest day because of your prior success. Keep marching forward.
Amazing. I mean,
I like that.
So good. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I just said I like that.
Yeah.
How come you never shared that?
Yeah, you're like, wow, thanks for waiting till the podcast to share your best bit of wisdom. Guys, this has been so great. I know the listeners are going to eat this up. How can they get in touch with you to cherry pick those cases? Maybe they have one that they're like, these three are the people that I need help with. How do they get in touch? Where do they contact you?
They could email any one of us, or they can call. I can give you my cell phone number, and we'll all share, whatever they're comfortable with. What's the easiest way?
I think let's start with email. What's your emails, website, that type of stuff?
Sure. So the website for the office is Savin Bursk Law. That's SAVIN, B as in boy, URSKLAW.com. We all have our emails on there. They can reach us there. There's also like a connect at savinbursklaw.com, and we'll get any of those emails. But if anybody ever wants to just reach out to me directly, my cell phone is 818-523-2758. Just say, saw you on Settlement Nation or heard you on Settlement Nation, and shoot me a text message and, say I want to, reach out to Brian or Maureen or Adam, and I'll make sure that gets communicated. 100%.
Perfect. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you all for coming on the show. It's been great. And who would have thought an hour went by, and I feel like we need to have you back on possibly to cover more stuff that we didn't even get to cover today. For everyone that listens to Settlement Nation, thank you so much for supporting us. Always in the top 3 of Trial Lawyer podcasts. Like, subscribe, comment, send them your love. You have their website now, so spam them with many great messages of how much you love listening to them. And we will see you again next week on Settlement Nation.